Hi, welcome back to Have Roots, Will Travel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. For the last several years, I've been focusing this channel's attention on les filles du roi and les filles mariées, the king's daughters and the marriageable girls. Truly founding mothers and grandmothers for New France, ultimately of Canada, and then ultimately of North America. Just amazing impact they made. We're closing in on 278. There are over 700 of them. We've come a long way. Let's keep going. And I also want to make sure that any of you who have ideas or questions about, a fille du roi that I haven't featured yet, please let me know. I keep a tally and a list and all of that. So please let me know. And I also want to make sure to let you know there are ways you can support the channel and its growth. We've grown so much in the last few months, but I want to make sure you know that subscribe, liking each video, and notifying is so important to that whole YouTube logarithm and getting the word out, if you will. And then also, if you want to help the channel itself grow, we have Patreon, which is my subscription base, where you get $1, $10, or $25 if you wanted to go that route. Depends on what level of interaction you want. And then we have coffee, which is kind of a one-time payment. And also on my website, we have the PayPal button where you can also donate. And there is on the actual YouTube channel a super thanks that people have started using. So it's kind of always a surprise when I get one. So thank you ever so much to all of you who have contributed. I really appreciate you. So with that being said, let's get started and get to know our Fille du Roi, episode number 278. Today we're going to be looking at episode 278, Suzanne Roussilion, who comes to us from a viewer request. So I'm very happy. I don't have her in my file, so it was lovely to get to know Suzanne and her story. Suzanne is from an area of France known as Oisey. She was born in 1645, and Oisey is found in the Brittany region of France. And inside of that, we have the Département Ille-et-Vilaine. Now, it is a quiet community. About 1,700 people live there now, but it is very historic, as so many, of the places in France are, and has been affected by many of the religious wars, has been an area that was definitely fought over. The church we have evidence that the original church was destroyed by fire in the 11th century and then rebuilt in the 12th and all of that. And so obviously this is an area where people fight and people actually are very much survivors. So that's kind of an interesting area for her to come from and approach the new world. So let's have a look at Suzanne's journey. Suzanne would arrive in New France aboard the Jean-Baptiste de Dieppe on June 18, 1665. The groom that she would select and who would select her, his name, Jacques Leblanc, and he was born in 1636 in a town called Pont-l'Evêque in France. His parents were Antoine Leblanc and Madeleine Boucher. Now, Pont-l'Evêque is from the Normandy. It's found in the Normandy region of France. And inside that region, we have Calvados, which is the département or county. It is famous for its cheese. The rabbit holes you go down when you're researching these videos is amazing. So apparently this cheese is phenomenal. And obviously the town grew around it. It actually has a very rich history. From a religious standpoint, it was definitely a place where people would it was a major crossroads between Rouen and Cayenne and Lisieux and the coast, and it's very much a passage, one of those places. And it has preserved a lot of its history, and it's got a wonderful farmers market. It actually is a city without walls or a garrison. It was occupied by the English in the 13th and 14th centuries and ultimately survived and was reclaimed by France. So all of that has been part of this amazing, amazing town. Definitely on my bucket list. So Jacques would be in New France, definitely by 1666, and he is working for the Sulpicians, the religious order that is in Montreal, and we can see him dans le domestique engagé, the domestic servant. So he is in Montreal, and he is working for the Sulpicians. So on June 3rd, 1666, Suzanne and Jacques were married. Now, what's interesting to note here, I always like to see things that, are not the same. And so generally speaking, it's just interesting that she arrived in June of 1665, to our knowledge, and did not marry for another year. So that's always an interesting kind of like what was going on. Where did she stay? That sort of thing. And but definitely we know that they were married in June of 1666. So by 1667, Jacques faces the law. He is accused and found guilty of having stolen 13 minnows of wheat. So that's about 13 bushels of wheat. And again, we don't know the circumstance. We just know that he was condemned to be beaten. He was branded with a fleur de lis and sentenced to 3 years in prison. So this is a really big fine. The illustration you see before you is the actual sentencing, and I've placed the link to it so that you can go and read it for yourselves. So that's all we know. Now remember, they're in Montreal. Then suddenly the family moves to Quebec. So this is what I surmised when I was going through this. I was like, well, that makes sense that he would want to start a brand new life. So they would go on to settle at Charlebourg, which is a borough now of Quebec City. But at the time, the origins of Charlebourg date all the way back to 1626. And the seigneury was a very large one. By 1665, the new intendant of justice at the time, Jean Talon, he set out to establish, he wanted to break it up and say, you know what, we need to build some villages. And so he wanted it laid out in a very particular way. You can see on the left hand of your screen, you can see Bourg-Royal, you can see Charlebourg, Petit-Sauvigny. You can see that in the square, it's laid out in a square with spokes, like a wheel or a star shape. And so in that middle, in the center, is that square, and that square is usually where the church would have been found, and all the houses would be linked to it. So in other words, all the land would actually point toward the church. So you can see why the control of that would have, made that appealing to people who wanted to control their habitants, if you will. So that was just but it's one of the rare places where this is laid out like this. This aerial shot in the bottom here is from the 1960s, and you can see it still is laid out exactly in this way. And the Charlebourg is definitely something that by 2002 is one of those cities that was merged into Quebec City. The church that was eventually created was built in honor of Charles Borromeo, who is the patron saint of the Counter-Revolution, and truly a leader in the Protestant Reformation. The combat. He was actually someone who really fought against that. Now, it is, when you visit, and again, I did not get a chance to visit this last year. This is again on my bucket list. The village and the neighborhood contains some of them very interesting old houses. Some of them are actually more than 200 years old. So this is really, really a beautiful area, an important area in any visit to Quebec. Now, this illustration is actually the church of, it was an illustration of at Charlebourg, the small church that existed there. Now, legal troubles follow them, but this time it is not Jacques, it is his wife who is accused by another fille du roi who accuses her of saying bad things. And so this fille du roi, Jeanne Roussilion, she brings a complaint against Suzanne and Jacques. I guess he was involved. And after hearing the case, the court said, you know, Jeanne, mind your own business. Essentially, that's what they said. And I have more, and I have posted a link in the notes to that video that I did of Jeanne Roussilion as well. So you can have a look at that. They would go on to have 9 children. Julien would marry Anne-Louise Vanier and have 13 children, all of whom survived, 10 of whom left descendants. Anne-Louise's mother was Madeleine Vanier, who we profiled in Fille du Roi, episode 210. I've posted the link in the notes. Michel would pass away before the 1681 census. Pierre we have no other information on. Françoise would marry Pierre Guilbeault, 30 years her senior at the age of 22, and Pierre Joubert when she was 37, but she did not produce any descendants. Jacques we have no other information on. Marie would marry Jean Maillard and have 2 children, both of whom made it to adulthood, before her early death at 30 years of age. Jean Maillard's mother was Maribel Ballade, a fille mariée who we have not yet profiled. Joseph would die in infancy. Marianne would marry Jacques Pivet and have 2 children, both of whom would survive. And then we have Charles, who would marry Suzanne Bon and would have 7 children, all of whom would survive. Suzanne's mother was Michel Duval, who is a fille du roi who we have not yet profiled. In the 1681 census, we find Jacques and Suzanne, their children, Julien, Pierre, Françoise, Jacques, and they have 1 cow and 8 alpins, about 6 acres of land. They would die within a few days of each other. Jacques would be first. He would die at the remarkable age of 74. And he and Suzanne would have been married almost 44 years upon his passing. Suzanne herself would pass away on April 17th, 3 days later, at 64 years of age. She left us with a descendancy that has 62 descendants as of 1729, but obviously the impact of Jacques and Suzanne lives on today in their descendants. And with that, we end our episode 278. That was kind of like a Lifetime movie of the week. It was just all kinds of drama and that sort of thing. But the good part is they got to live a nice long life, and they passed together essentially. So I kind of think they were karmic and kind of soulmates. So I like to think of them that way. And we bless Suzanne and her gift and her stamina and her ability to withstand whatever life threw at her. We are very, very grateful for her gifts and her courage and ultimately her sacrifice. We bless her memory and we say thanks. And I say thanks to patrons, supporters, and subscribers. You are truly amazing. Thank you, each and every one of you. And I will see you on episode 279. Until then, au revoir.